What's going on? Welcome in the Matt Bernier Show, DRFTV, live.drf.com, livestream.com, the Daily Racing Forms Twitter handle, that would be at DRF Inside Post, as well as the Daily Racing Forms Facebook page. My name is Matt Bernier. You can follow me on Twitter, at Bernier_Matt. If you listen to this show podcast form, you've got YouTube, iTunes, SoundCloud, video.drf.com. This is the preview edition of the Matt Bernier Show, taking a look at a few races coming up this coming Saturday afternoon, March the 24th, big day of racing down at the Fairgrounds. We will dive into that and then some, a couple of races also out at Santa Anita Park. We are getting close. Anyway, this Saturday is going to be the kickoff of the final round of Derby preps leading into the Kentucky Derby, and it is the beginning of the 100-point preps. And I think it's interesting to go through and take a look and see. You're going to have a couple other preps that aren't 100-point ones. You'll have on Sunday the Sunland Derby. We won't dive into that. You'll also have the Lexington, which is later on in the second week in April, which is only 20 points for the winner. So it usually hasn't been used as a prep for the Derby. It's been more so used as a prep for the Preakness. Neither here nor there. This is all about just going back and taking a look and seeing, because we've had 5 years now that this Derby point system has been implemented, to go back and see how the winners of each of these final 100-point preps have done in Louisville. The one race that I won't touch on because there really hasn't been a heck of a lot of success is the UAE Derby, which is a 100-point race as well, just simply because it's been difficult for those horses to come over from Dubai and run well here. But I figured since Louisiana Derby is on Saturday, and before we dive into the nuts and bolts and taking a look at value lines and possible plays, let's see how these races have sort of, what they've done, what have they produced in the Kentucky Derby. So the list of winners of the past 5 years of these 100-point preps, it's very important anyway. I think that's the thing. In a small sample size, it's important at face value to run well in these final preps leading into the Derby. And I know that sounds very, very obvious, but it's very, very important because so far all 5 winners of the Kentucky Derby of these 5 years have come from winners of one of these final 5 preps. So if you go back last year, Always Dreaming won the Florida Derby. He went on to win the Kentucky Derby. 2 years ago, Nyquist won the Florida Derby, went on to win the Kentucky Derby. You go back to 2013, the first year the Derby point system was implemented. Orb won the Florida Derby, went on to win the Kentucky Derby. 2014, California Chrome won the Santa Anita Derby, went on to win the Kentucky Derby. And in 2015, we know American Pharoah, he won the Arkansas Derby, went on to win the Kentucky Derby as well as the Triple Crown. So you've had 5 years of these Derby point system kind of being a thing. The winner of each one of those Derbies came out of a victory in the final 100-point prep. So kind of important. But there have been other positive runs. Not necessarily wins, but you've had other solid efforts from other runners that won these final preps leading into the Derby. 2 years ago, Gunrunner finished third in Louisiana. He won the Louisiana Derby, went on to finish third in the Kentucky Derby. 2013, Revolutionary won the Louisiana Derby. He finished second in the Kentucky Derby. You go a little bit farther back, look at the Wood Memorial. Frosted, he won that race in 2015, finished fourth in the Derby that year. 2014, Wicked Strong won the Wood Memorial, went on to finish fourth in the Kentucky Derby. Santa Anita Derby, 2 years ago, Exaggerator, he wins in that sloppy racetrack, goes on to finish second in the Kentucky Derby behind Nyquist. 2015, Dortmund won the Santa Anita Derby, goes on to finish third behind American Pharoah in the Kentucky Derby. You know, you've had a number of positive results from these horses that won these final preps. Maybe not victories in the Kentucky Derby itself, but it's been very, very important. The Arkansas Derby, Classic Empire, he won that race last year, went on to finish fourth in the Kentucky Derby. Then in 2014, at a big price, Danza won down in Arkansas. He came back to finish third in the Run for the Roses. So I guess my bigger point just all around is, sure, if you win, you're certainly a prime contender going in to Churchill Downs the first Saturday in May. But if you win, you're also just putting yourself in position to run well, even if you can't quite get there and have the roses draped over you after the race is over. The one race so far that's been a little bit odd in that there really hasn't been any major success as far as top 4 runners are concerned is the Bluegrass from Keeneland, because between IRAP and Brody's Cause and Carpe Diem, and unfortunately we had the entire incident with Dance with Fate, but also Java's War, there hasn't been a heck of a lot of success out of that race. The Wood has been a little topsy-turvy, but and again, I'm only speaking about the Kentucky Derby itself, not saying going forward, because we know what a lot of these horses have turned into, where you had a horse like Frosted, who ultimately turned into a Met Mile winner. And last year in the Wood Memorial, you had the runner-up, I believe, or third-place finisher, Cloud Computing, come back to win the Preakness. So this doesn't necessarily mean that these horses can't run at all, but as far as the Kentucky Derby is concerned, 5 years point systems, the 5 winners of the Derby have come out of wins in these final 100-point Derby preps. And you know what? Here we are. The first one comes up this weekend in the Louisiana Derby. And let's take a look at that field. You've got 3-year-olds going a mile and an eighth. $1 million is the purse. And it's a grade 2 event. The field of 10 signed on in post position order. My odds as far as a value line is concerned, this is not the morning line. This is what I think would be a fair number on each one of these runners. The number 1 is Bravazzo. Bravazzo, I have him at 5-1. A nice horse. He won the Risen Star most recently over Snapper Sinclair, who's also going to be in this spot. I just feel like he's one of those horses. You could have had him at 21 last time. Now he's going to be significantly less. I made him 5-1. Noble Indy for Todd Pletcher. I think he has all the upside. He has all the potential. You don't know what he could be just yet. He hasn't taken a step back in any of his 3 lifetime starts. The problem is the blinkers go on for Pletcher for the first time. Past 5 years, dirt, first time blinkers, graded stakes race for Todd Pletcher. He's 1 for 18 with a 57-cent ROI. I've made him 6-1. Marmello in very, very tough, 99-1. The number 4, Give Me a Minute. Seems like his best runs come at 1 turn thus far as opposed to 2. Made him 32-1. Retirement Fund is the 5. Made him 16-1. The number 6 is Hinford, another Pletcher runner. Thought he was okay and just okay in that race at Tampa. Looks like he gets flattered by Magnum Moon, who comes back last weekend to win the Rebel. At the same time, he was never even close to Magnum Moon in that race at Tampa. I don't love Hinford in here, 16-1. The number 7 is Snapper Sinclair. Very nice horse for Steve Asmussen. Co-highest last out buyer in the field with a 93. Really, the Risen Star is a fascinating race because there wasn't a heck of a lot of running going on coming from the back of the pack. Makes me look at it and say, you know, do you want horses coming out of that race, or was last time the time to have a Snapper Sinclair, a Bravazzo, anyone else that was forwardly placed? Because just for one reason or another, the racetrack was a little bit quirky. Think he does have a puncher's chance here, though. Goes to Jose Ortiz aboard 5-1. The number 8 is Lone Sailor for Tom Amoss. On paper, no chance because he is incredibly slow. But I thought that most recent run in the non-winners of 1 other than was much better than it looks. The Lecomte 2 starts back was his first start as a 3-year-old, first start off of the bench. Didn't really do much running there. He was forward and then just flattened down the lane. I think you're going to get a better, a more improved effort here. Made him 9-1. The number 9 is My Boy Jack, the winner of the Southwest over that sloppy racetrack. Thought inside was gold. Kent DeSormo, great ride. Hugged the rail throughout. Shot up there. Finished full of run. Think this is a nice horse. Ultimately think he's going to be a turf horse when it's all said and done. But he does have a big chance in here. Made him 9-2. Then number 10 is Dark Templar for Brendan Walsh. Florent Giroux has the mount. Outside this horse, both of his victories basically in front-running fashion. Going to have to make a decision early on. Are you going to send him and try to pull that sort of gun runner trip from the Pegasus World Cup, or are you going to take back and try to make something happen? Don't love his chances from that far outside post. Made him 12-1. That leads us to the pick and the play in this year's Louisiana Derby. I'm looking for a little bit of a number in here, mainly because I feel like a lot of the main contenders, last time was the time to get good value on them. I don't love any of them. I'm going to go with Lone Sailor in here for Tom Amoss. I think if they heat things up front early on, there's a scenario where he's going to come with a run. I just love the way that he finished most recently. There was no pace for him to run at, and he still came with a very, very good effort. Best stride was late. Thought the gallop out was good. He's going to be a giant, giant price, and here's 20-1 on the morning line. I made him 9-1 on my value line. He's certainly not the likeliest of win candidates, but I think he's going to outrun his odds. Pedigree at face value would suggest that distance isn't going to be his friend, but just looking at the way that he runs, I think there's some positive things to like here about Lone Sailor. I will give him a shot with James Graham aboard again, 9-1 on my value line. As far as the play is concerned, like I said, I don't love anyone else in here. If the shorter prices beat me, so be it, but this is kind of one that I'll sit back, look at the race just as a whole and see what happens. And you know what? If I'm lucky enough to have Lone Sailor run well, I'll play $10 to win and $10 to show. The $10 show bet with a bigger price for me is basically the saver that I've done in the past with exactas. And you're probably going to see that later on here when we go over one of the stakes races from Santa Anita. But the idea for me here is with a horse like Lone Sailor, you know, I understand some people look at it and say, well, you've just taken away a win bet from your capital. Why would you do that? I look at it and say there's a real chance coming from the back of the pack. If he just clunks up, maybe passes some tired horses, I can get back that win bet that I made on him. And I understand maybe some people don't like the philosophy. That's just how I go about it. But you have to do it with a bigger price. I think Lone Sailor is going to fit the bill again. I made him 9-1. Think he goes off much closer to that morning line of 20-1, if not higher than that. So I'll play 10 to win and 10 to show on the number 8 Lone Sailor in the Louisiana Derby, acknowledging he is not a likely win candidate, but I think he has a puncher's chance in a race that really on on paper, looks like it's pretty wide open. We'll find out, though, if the trend continues with winners of these final 100-point preps having a big chance to go on and have big success the first Saturday in May. One of the other big events down at the Fairgrounds on Saturday afternoon is race number 9. This is the field going about 1.1 miles on the turf course for the Mena Handicap. $300,000 of the purse. You're going to have a couple of horses that take the lion's share of the money, including the number 1 horse, Synchrony, who I think is very talented. From Mike Stidham, I thought his run in the Fairgrounds Handicap was very strong. That was his first start since May of 2017. He'd been gone for a long time, and he came with a serious late kick, popped back to his left lead late, but I thought it was a positive effort, something he can certainly build upon. Again, far right side, those are my odds. It's a value line, not the morning line. I made him 4-1. Think he is a major player in here. The number 2 Zulu Alpha for Neil Howard, thought he was going to be something serious when he got here to the States, and it just has not happened. I would love to see Brian Hernandez be very aggressive with this horse and have him forwardly placed, but at the end of the day, on paper, I don't think he's got a big chance in here. Made him 99-1. The number 3 Galton for Mike Maker. Joel Rosario scheduled to have the mount. This is a horse that he has done some good things in the past, but recent form just leaves a little bit to be desired. Don't think he's good enough. 49-1. The number 4 is Arklow for Brad Cox. Javier has the mount. This is a horse second start off the bench. Won in his most recent start. That was a non-winners of 2 other than. He did some good things to the 3-year-old, also did some really poor things. The way that he finished his campaign up at Saratoga was just a disaster. He never took that big step forward, and even in that return effort, I think it was easier than it may look on paper, but he never took a step forward from a buyer's standpoint. I think it's going to take probably a 100 to win this race, and on paper, thus far, he hasn't even sniffed a 100. His career best number is a 92. Doesn't mean he can't do it in his second start as a 4-year-old, but I need him to prove to me that he can. 13-1. The number 5 is Danish Dynaformer for Roger Atfield. I think this horse needs more distance. I think ultimately this is probably just a prep to get to something longer. 49-1. The number 6 is Lucullen for Kieran McLaughlin. Gary Stevens picks up the mount. This horse I thought was tremendous in that most recent start. First start as a 4-year-old off of a long layoff down at Gulfstream and a non-winners of 2 other than. He got shuffled on the far turn, angled out, came with a tremendous late kick. I thought it was a really strong effort. Lucullen, I think, is a prime contender, made him 9-2. The number 7 is One Mean Man. Bernie Flint has the training assignment here. This is a horse that, you know what, he really hasn't done a heck of a lot wrong in his career. He's 7 of 31. He's been a money machine. He's over $500,000 in career earnings. I just don't think he's good enough to win this race. 99-1. The number 5, Mr. Misunderstood. Another runner in here for Cox. Florent Giroux stays here aboard this runner. Ran second behind Synchrony. No match in that Fairgrounds Handicap. Really hasn't done a heck of a lot wrong. That was his only defeat on turf. So he's 8 of 9 lifetime on grass. I think he's a very nice horse, and perhaps his versatility is going to go a long way in this race. If he can get into the running a little bit earlier than maybe he was in that Fairgrounds Handicap where he started his run basically at the same time as Synchrony, if he can get the jump on Synchrony this time around, I think he's interesting. Made him 6-1. Number 9 is Forge for Bill Mott. Most recently, second by a half length behind Champion World Approval in the Tampa Bay Stakes at Tampa Bay Downs. 105 buyer. Far and away the highest last out in the entire field. Second off the layoff. Should take a step forward. I've never loved Forge, but I've got to admit, if you think that he's possibly going to take a step forward here, he's a major threat in this race. I made him 6-1. The number 10 is Revved Up for Shug McGahee. I've never loved this horse. I think he's honest. I think he shows up, comes with a run. I think he needs lesser to shine, if I'm being completely honest. Looks like you're going to have a dry turf course down there. Don't love his chances. 13-1. And the number 11 is Ring Weekend for Graham Motion. To me, I said it when we did the stakes preview, and you can find that full in depth as well as all of the Fairgrounds races coming up on Saturday afternoon over on the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel or video.drf.com. I think this might be Motion's best training job basically ever, because Ring Weekend, we know he's basically held together with Scotch tape. He's been a very ouchy horse throughout his career. And the fact that Graham has gotten him just as sound as he has and keeps him going, and he keeps running here at the ripe old age of 7. He just keeps showing up. Thought that most recent run was very good. Beat a couple of solid horses in Profiteer and Saham. Think he does have a chance. That outside post is a very tough draw, though, for Jose Ortiz. Made him 6-1. Let's go to the pick and the play. The pick for me in this race is Lucullen. Talked about him a little bit. We're going to take a look at the replay right now of that non-winners of 2 other than. Swings widest of them all. I love the way that this horse finishes, especially considering he could have easily shut it down when he got shuffled on that far turn. Instead, Irad Ortiz prevails with him, sticks out to the outside. I thought he was very strong, finished full of run. Gallop out was good. He was never really a loser in that spot. That was at 1 1/8. I loved that off that long layoff. He came back and fired at 9. You're going to get about 9 furlongs here on Saturday afternoon. I think the problem is he's going to get bet. He's 8-1 on the morning line. I think he comes down significantly from there, and I'm not sure entirely that I'm going to get my 9-2 odds, but that leads us into the play. For me, this would be a $40 win bet. And again, the numbers, they're placeholders. You play whatever you're comfortable playing and don't go over your head. I would play 40 to win on Luke Cullen, 9-2 or greater. I'm fearful that I'm not going to get that. So just in case, I look at it and say, I think there are two main contenders in here. I like Mr. Misunderstood. He's a nice horse, but I don't think he's as talented as Luke Cullen or the number 1 Synchrony, who Synchrony I think is the most likely winner of the race. Tepid, though. I made him 4-1. He's 7-2 on the morning line. I will play a $10 or $20 exacta box, with the 1 Synchrony as well as the number 6 Luke Cullen. But most of my eggs will be in Luke Cullen's basket. Hopefully he's the up-and-comer, and this is going to be an important race for him. Kieran has already said it. This is kind of the race to find out. Do you go to the Grade 1 Turf Classic on Derby Day, or that same sort of time frame, do you go up and run in a Grade 3 event at Belmont Park? A lot will be determined on Saturday afternoon in the Mena Handicap, but I like Luke Cullen, the number 6, to get the job done. Let's shift our attention out west. These are fillies and mares. They're going to be going 7/8 of a mile on the main track in the Grade 2 Santa Monica, race number 5 at the Great Race Place Santa Anita. It's a small field, but a select field. Here they are. There are only going to be 5 of them. The number 1 is Marley's Freedom, going out for Bob Hess Jr. This is a talented filly, but boy, she looks like she's going to be in a little bit tough. I thought that run 2 back in La Brea was good, but she was no match for Unique Bella or Paradise Woods. She will again face Paradise Woods in this spot. Draw a line through that Hurricane Birdie, though. She had a terrible start from the gate, and she really ran a lot better than probably it looks on paper. I think she's in a little bit tough here, though, 10-1. Number 2, Just a Little Hope, coming from turf, turning back on the dirt. I don't love her chances in this spot unless things just go absolutely haywire early on. Made her 32-1. Number 3, Paradise Woods, is one of my favorites. I think she's incredibly talented. I love everything about her. This has not been the easiest time to get her back to the races. She had a little bit of an issue. She's been a little bit moody in training. I have to be honest, there's a part of me that wonders more and more if she's just better going longer than she is shorter. And if that's the case, at a shortish number on Saturday, is this nothing more than a means to an end to get her out to a longer race, to get her out to a longer distance? I think she has every right to run well and even win this race, but I kind of want to be against her a little bit in this spot. I made her 5-2 on my value line. The number 4 is Sky Diamonds, another horse that I've been a very, very big fan of for Bill Spar. This is a horse most recently. She was no match for Selcourt, going 6 furlongs in the Las Flores, but you see that she has not lost anything as far as a step or any miles an hour on the fastball. She continues to run very, very well, and I think she's going to take a step forward here, second off the bench. Made her 5-2, and the number 5 is Selcourt, who is the now horse in this division out on the West Coast for John Sadler. She really has done nothing wrong in her career. She's never been out of the money in 5 lifetime starts. Since she came back here in 2018, all she's done is win 2 stakes races, one of them graded, including the most recent run in that Las Flores. She is the highest last out buyer in the field with a 100, and she could be controlling speed. There's really not a lot to knock about this filly. I made her 2-1. That leads us to the pick and the play. The pick for me, though, in this race is going to be Sky Diamonds. I thought Sky Diamonds ran really, really well. We're going to take a look at the replay right now of that Las Flores, and I think the thing, for me anyway, I don't like how late she was to change leads, but I think the great equalizer in this race on Saturday could be the 7/8 of a mile, where perhaps Selcourt, who has only gone this distance once in her career, and she faded a little bit, and I know that preceded a long layoff, maybe this distance is a little bit far for her, and if she takes some heat early from Paradise Woods, and I'm going to need Paradise Woods to go, perhaps the distance gets the better of Selcourt, perhaps the layoff gets the better of Paradise Woods, and Sky Diamond, second off the layoff, comes with a big, big run and just gobbles them all up late. I mentioned second off the bench. We've got a positive formulator fact for Bill Spar, and I think this is an important one to note. Past year dirt, second after the layoff in sprint races, 6 for 16, 11 of them in the money with a 319 ROI. She's nothing but consistent. She shows up, she runs her race no matter where it is. I like everything about her, and I think I might get the 5-2. And therefore, in a short field, I might take a little shot here. She might even drift up from that 5-2, what I've made her anyway. Maybe she goes off in that 3-1, 7-2 range, considering Selcourt's going to get bet. You know Paradise Woods is going to get bet. I'll play 50 to win on the number 4 Sky Diamonds in the Santa Monica at Santa Anita on Saturday afternoon. Hopefully this pace scenario helps. Maybe even if Marley's Freedom is aggressively ridden from the inside, she can add to the pace. And if Sky Diamonds can sit 3-4 lengths out of it, come with that run like she always does, I'll take my chances here. 50 to win on the number 4 Sky Diamonds at 5-2 or greater in the Santa Monica at Santa Anita on Saturday afternoon. Fourth and final race we'll go over on this week's edition of the Matt Bernier Show, the preview edition. That is the 9th race at Santa Anita on Saturday. It's the Grade 2 San Luis Rey, 1.5 miles on the turf course. Let's take a look at the field. Obviously, this is a race that I think is going to carry a little bit more weight this year, knowing everything that happened with the fire and all the tragedy. Now, I think this is a race, everybody wants to win a grade stakes race, but this is going to be kind of that sentimental, nice event that I think a lot of people are going to gravitate toward, and let's hope the weather just cooperates with us and everything goes well. So here we are in post position order. The number 1 is Rye for Bill Morey. Bill Morey's barn continues to be very, very strong at this meeting, clipping at about 31%. I thought this horse was nice in that Turf Classic most recently. That was for state breds. Hasn't come back all that strong. Was bet down to 2 to 1. Much, much tougher field this time around. Made this horse 32 to 1. The number 2 is another one of my favorites. It's in the post. Picked him in the Breeders' Cup Turf last year. Thought he ran better than it probably looks on paper, considering that early mid-move that he made. He also ran very well in that San Marcos most recently to win the craziest of head bobs. You want to talk about the scantest nose of all noses over Hayabusa 1, who he'll again face in this spot here. Thought he ran really well there. He is the horse to beat. There's no question about it. I made him 2 to 1 on my value line. The number 3 is Play Hard to Get for Ian Crueljack. Rajiv Mirage has really taken to this horse, and I love what they did last time. You got to be aggressive with him. Got to send him. You send this horse, there's a chance that he can get brave and go a little bit farther than necessarily he should on paper based on his Beyer speed figures. Having said that, I still think he's in a little bit tough. We know what he is at this point in his career. He's 7 years old. He's going to give you a low 90. Don't think a low 90 is quite good enough to win this race. Made him 32 to 1. Saltini for Richard Mandel. Stuart Elliott has the mount. This is a horse that really has always hinted at ability. And now you've paired up 90 Beyers in the 2 starts off of the layoff. 2 starts as a 5-year-old. Victory most recently in the non-winners of 1 other than. Beat Oscar Dominguez. Oscar Dominguez, I think, is overmatched in this spot. But Saltini, and truth be told, I think he's a little bit overmatched as well. But you at least have some positives to look at and think that maybe there's going to be a forward move. And if he can get into the mid-90s or even a high 90, he at least threatens to get a piece in this race. Made him 32 to 1. The number 5 is Oscar Dominguez, who we just spoke about. Came out of that common race with Saltini. No match for Saltini, beaten by 3.5 lengths. Can't imagine him turning the tables on Saltini and everyone else in here. 49 to 1. The number 6, Aquaphobia for Robert Falcone. I've always thought that this is a nice horse. Distance is going to be his friend, I think. Ever since they brought him out to the West Coast, he's done some good things. And I know that was only 1 start. It was a Super Bowl handicap, but he ran really well that day. Thought he ran really well 2 starts back at Aqueduct. This is a horse that makes a lot of sense in here. But again, from a speed figure standpoint, he's a little bit on the light side, made him 32 to 1. The number 7 is Responsible for Love. This is a mare. She's taking on the boys. I liked her a little bit. I thought she would have been sneaky had they gotten into the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Turf with her. They did not. They instead come back, bring her in the red carpet handicap. Disappointed in that effort. Thought she should have gotten the job done. She comes back in the Bobby Frankel. Disappointing effort there. A little bit of a head-scratching ride. I thought they should have been more aggressive with her. Instead, they sit off of no pace. That race has come back to be positive, but at the same time, I think she's in a pretty tough spot here. Made her 49 to 1. The number 8 is Colonist for Jerry Hollendorfer and Flavian Pratt. Most recently, a winner of a non-winners of 2, other than only by a head. The 8th place finisher in that race, who I believe was the last place finisher, came back to win next out on Synthetic with an 89 Beyer. So at least the form so far has held up. The big knock against this horse thus far is that he's not fast enough. We'll talk about that more momentarily, though. I made him 6 to 1. The number 9 is Hayabusa 1. Already spoke about this horse when we talked about It's in the Post. If you had him last time at 14 to 1, I feel very, very bad for you. I know my friend Chris Felica needed this horse, to borrow a Mike Watchmaker phrase, like he needed oxygen, and he lost the dirtiest of noses. The problem here is you're going to get a fraction of that 14 to 1 this time around. He's going to be the second choice. I think he has a big chance in here. Getting out to 1.5 miles shouldn't be a problem. Made him 3 to 1. And the number 10 is Frank Conversation, coming off of a significant layoff. Haven't seen him since the 1st of October last year, running in the John Henry Turf Cup. He finished 3rd that day. It's in the Post. Clearly better than him. Prime Attraction came back to win next out. But I kind of look at it and think Frank Conversation can be forwardly placed. I just don't know if he's quite good enough to beat these horses. He's already been handled by It's in the Post in the past, and I have a hard time envisioning him turning the tables entirely, but that pace does go a long way. I made him 6-1. The pick and the play for this race is one that, have you ever had a horse that you look at and you say, I just wish they would do X with this horse? That's what Colonist is with me. Now, Colonist, I have this written down going back to the summer of last year when he came out of the Los Alamitos Derby and they ran him in the La Jolla. I thought he ran very well in the La Jolla, considering Sharp Samurai, who I think is one of the better older horses out there on turf on the West Coast. I have written in Formulator, and it's the beautiful thing about Formulator. You write your notes there, in there for as long as the horse runs. I said he needs more distance. Needs distance, needs distance. I have a horse note saying, needs long distance races. Continued on, and I'm looking at it going, just get him, stretch him out. They come back in the Del Mar Derby. He runs fine, a little bit flat at the end. Off for some time, comes back in the Mathis Brothers Mile. Too short. Comes back in that non-winners of two other than on the dirt at a mile and 16th. I don't think he's a dirt horse. Then they come back in the mile race most recently, and he galloped out like an absolute monster. I've been waiting for this horse to get long on the turf. I get it on Saturday. I don't know if he's good enough. I understand. Like I said, I think it's probably going to take about a 100 to win this race. He has not sniffed that on turf. He earned a 96 in that Los Al Derby, but at the same time, I don't know that he's been allowed to do what he wants to do all along. He rallied into slow fractions most recently. He actually showed a little bit of a turn of foot, which I'm not used to with this horse because I feel like he's more of a stayer. I need him to be a little bit more aggressively ridden. I don't want him to be 4 or 5 lengths out of it because you can't outkick It's in the Post and you can't outkick Hayabusa 1. But if you can get the jump on them, and I think he can just clip off 23-2, 23-3s. I don't think we're dealing with a horse that's going to get tired. I think there's a lot of interesting pieces about this horse. Now, look, I thought an interesting horse last weekend was Sandy's Surprise, and she's still running right now down at Oaklawn. So, clearly, sometimes you're right, sometimes you're wrong. I think this is an instance, though, where this horse, I think this is what he's wanted all along, to go really long on the turf. And you know what? Not dissimilar from what we saw last year with It's in the Post, where It's in the Post was always a nice middle-distance horse. No superstar. He would find 1 or 2 better than him. The minute they stretched him out, he turned into a different animal. And it's as simple as that sometimes. I think Colonist fits that bill. I think getting out to this longer distance is only going to be beneficial at 1.5 miles. The pick and the play. I like the number 8 Colonist in here. I'm also going to play him to win. I'll play $20 to win on him because, again, he's not the likeliest winner in here. Those top 2, they're going to take a world of beating. It's in the Post and Hayabusa 1. So I'll play 20 to win on Colonist, the number 8 horse, but I'll also back it up with that Savor Exacta, the 1 horse. I'm sorry, the 2 horse. It should be, right? The 2 horses. It's in the Post, and the number 9 horse, Hayabusa 1. I will play the 2 of them on top, and I will use the number 8 Colonist underneath. So 20 to win on Colonist, and then $10 Exactas with the 2 and the 9 over the 8 in the San Luis Rey, going 1.5 miles on the turf course out at Santa Anita on Saturday afternoon. That is going to wrap up this edition, the preview edition of the Matt Bernier Show. If you've been listening live on Friday afternoon at noon, you've got live.drf.com, you've got livestream.com, you've got the social media pages for the Daily Racing Form. That would be at DRF Inside Post on Twitter, as well as the Daily Racing Forum's Facebook page. If you listen to this in podcast, which most of you do, YouTube, iTunes, SoundCloud, video.drf.com. As we always do, we will get you ready to go. The latest edition Out of the Gate is coming up momentarily. We will go back and recap all of these races and then some coming up on Tuesday. The recap edition of the Matt Bernier Show. Get you ready. And again, hopefully we'll see if the trend continues with those big efforts in the 100-point Derby preps. And obviously, the Louisiana Derby is the first one of them. But you'll also have the Sunland Park Derby. That'll be on Sunday afternoon. And we'll get you ready going into next week, because next week's a big one. You've got the Florida Derby. You've got all the races out in Dubai. And then the following week, you get the real big day. Super Saturday, if you will, with the Santa Anita Derby, the Bluegrass, the Wood Memorial. You name it. It's all coming. We are here. This is the final push toward the first Saturday in May, the day that everyone's looking forward to, the Kentucky Derby. But business to take care of first. If you listen to this live, you've already listened to the DRF Players podcast with Peter Thomas Fornatal and Jonathan Kinchin. And as we always do, we'll lead into the latest edition of Out of the Gate. We'll go over a bunch of different races. You get all sorts of good stuff from all of our usual contributors all across the country. So until Tuesday with the recap edition, best of luck this weekend, however you're playing, whatever you're playing, wherever you're playing. This is Matt Bernier Show.